Russia for its election interference. All right, that's called unanimous, basically. All right, so that happened last summer. Why is the Trump White House dragging its feet? And is that a fair characterization? Joining us now is Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Is that a fair characterization? Has the White House been dragging its feet?
Well, Chris, it's really striking that on an action that was taken so broadly by the Senate, like that 98-2 vote last summer, that the president, the White House, the administration hasn't taken up these new sanctioning authorities and used them aggressively. It raises the question what possible reason the administration has for not imposing real costs on the Russians for their interference in our last election.
And when you ask the White House, where's the direction? Who are you going to target? When is this going to take effect? What do you get?
So far, they have used sanctioning authorities against other countries that were also part of that same bill, against North Korea, against Iran, although they were slow to act in both of those cases. There hasn't been, in my mind, any satisfactory explanation. It continues to be puzzling. All the way back to the campaign, candidate Trump made repeated, unprecedented statements that were positive, glowing about Vladimir Putin and Russia, and were negative or even attacking our Western European allies. And as President Trump, he's continued a puzzling practice of not taking decisive action against Russia. So this would be an important moment for the national security leadership and the Trump administration to press the president to take stronger action against Russia.
All right, so we'll see what they do on that today. Second item of business, the memo that the Republicans are touting, specifically Devin Nunes and his staffers, that the American people need to see this. The Democrats don't want people to see it. Are you okay with this memo being released? And do you believe it has anything of importance to the American people?
Well, Chris, I don't know anything about the contents of the memo. I haven't seen it. It has been shared, apparently, with members of the House beyond the House Intelligence Committee. The Senate Intelligence Committee members, I believe, still haven't seen it. And President Trump's own Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice, has been strenuously objecting to a public release of it. I trust Congressman Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on House Intelligence, who says that it is a thinly veiled attack piece designed to undermine the credibility of the FBI and the investigation of Robert Mueller. And I think before releasing something like this, it should be carefully and thoroughly reviewed and the DOJ given an opportunity to respond in a classified setting.
But don't you think in this, obviously you have to do it with safeguards. You don't want sources out there. You don't want any methods that you don't want to detail to people to be out there. But you do that on a regular basis. Things are qualified in their declassification. Don't you think it would be better to just let the American people and the media see what's in it, chew on it, debate it, because mystery is so powerful in this environment right now. The unknown, like we saw with the secret organization within the FBI because of the missing texts. You know, the unknown is salacious and powerful. Often the truth, not so much.
Salacious and powerful and distracting, and intentionally so. Chris, what I'm concerned about is a steady drumbeat of efforts by Republicans, particularly in the House, to undermine the credibility of federal law enforcement, the FBI, and in particular, Special Counsel Robert Mueller. The bombshell revelation by the New York Times on Thursday night that President Trump attempted to fire Special Counsel Mueller last June reinforces the urgency of our passing legislation in the Senate that would protect the Special Counsel from an unwarranted or abrupt firing. I think the consequences of that happening would be significant. And I do think, to get back to your question, that if there's a thorough review of this memo and there's not much to it that could harm sources or methods, it should be released. I just don't know enough about what it contains or why it's considered to be so damaging by the DOJ in their opposition to its being released.
Well, what they're saying is they haven't seen it. It's about review and disclosure, not its content. So we'll see. But on the protecting the special counsel, the Republicans, we just had Congressman Scott Taylor, but he's voicing something that's somewhat of a consensus within its own party. He didn't fire Mueller. It's been a long time since June. He says he won't fire Mueller. Why waste the time with legislation that's not necessary?
Because we see now a president who has no clear sense of his boundaries and of the rule of law. On occasion, he consults his lawyers and follows their advice, and the outcome has been positive. On occasion, he doesn't consult his lawyers, and he's done and said things that have really threatened the rule of law, from firing Comey to a number of the other abrupt actions that he's taken. Let me just get to the point. This is a small legislative matter that would take current regulations and make them law, that say that if the special counsel were abruptly removed without cause, the counsel could find his way to be reinstated through a 3-judge panel. It is a small preventive measure. When I ask my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats alike, would it be a big deal if the president abruptly fired Robert Mueller? They all say absolutely. It would be a constitutional crisis. When I say to them, what would you do? They don't have a clear answer. We don't know what our next steps would be as a body. And so if we could put this speed bump in place that would just prevent the president from taking a rash and an unwarranted act, I think it would strengthen our constitutional order and protect our country from an unnecessary moment should the president go off the rails on this issue again.
It doesn't seem likely that you'd get a majority vote, but we'll see if you guys are able to get it to the floor and what happens with that. Let me ask you about immigration, but I want to flip the dialogue as I've been listening to it this weekend. The dialogue in standard is, all right, well, here's what the president is offering. Let's see if the Republicans will swallow this. Let's flip it the other way. Are any members of your party saying, wow, we're giving up a lot just to get the Dreamers helped here. We're getting them this wall that we all say we don't need. We're allowing them to stem the tide of legal immigration into this country, somewhat redefine the parameters of who we are, totally throw the lottery under the bus, totally throw family reunification under the bus under the name of what they're calling, these family anti-migration policies. Are any of you stepping up and saying, why are we giving up so much to get something that they all say they want to do on the Republican side as a matter of morality?
Well, Chris, there are vigorous debates in the Democratic caucus on exactly those grounds. There is very strong opposition to the idea of ending the diversity lottery because the Democratic Party broadly views diversity as a strength of our country, not as a challenge or a problem to be dealt with or minimized. We also view immigration to reunify families as one of the great positives of our immigration policy of the past, not as a great challenge or weakness. And we'd like to find an appropriate balance between skill-based or merit-based immigration and family reunification immigration. And some of the proposals that have been put out by the White House are really extreme in terms of attacking both family-based migration and diversity as one of the goals of migration. There's an overall difference in our views. I think there is a shared compassion by the American people for the Dreamers who were brought here through no fault of their own by their parents. But our broader view of immigration as a Democratic Party is that it's part of the strength of America. It brings the energy and the talent and the skills of people from around the world, from different cultures, to help strengthen America going forward. There's clearly folks on the other side of this debate from us who have an exactly opposite view. And I think this should be looked at not as a zero-sum game where we make concessions to our core values, but where we find I think where we should be proceeding is to start with the smallest, narrowest possible deal on border security and Dreamers and see if we can build out from there in a way that doesn't compromise our core values as Democrats. Well, that may be very difficult to do, but we'll get to it this week.
Let's see. This week, huh? Well, I guess you don't have much of a choice, but we'll see. We'll be watching it. Thank you very much, Senator. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, Poppy.
All right, so several members